welcome to the Press Restart podcast, our 5th episode. I am the Retro Room. You can find me at the Retro Room on YouTube, and I focus on games, retro typically, but also newer ones as well. We're a place to come around and just basically hang out, have a good time, and enjoy yourself. And I have with me the wonderful Ash, Mr. AR Games.
Guys, I'm Ash, or AR Games, whatever you want to call me. And today we've got our first ever guest on the show, which is Sean, also known as Vakantscull.
Hello!
There you go. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your channel and yourself, what kind of content you make, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Vakantscull, but everyone calls me Sean because Vakantscull just sounds weird when you're down the post office. No, I'm Sean. I have a channel called Vakantscull Archives where I basically have made it my goal to play, complete and review for cataloguing purposes my entire console collection, so physical and digital. So yeah, that's pretty much my channel in a nutshell. I tried a couple of things here and there that didn't work out, but yeah, now it's just focusing on the mainly retro side of things, but we are working slowly towards the PS4 and more recent sort of eras of gaming.
Very nice. I guess I do have just so we can have a bit more elaboration on exactly who you are. I've taken a look at some of your videos on there. I think I've left a comment or two, and I've definitely liked several of them. There's some pretty high quality content on there. Of course, we'll always have a link down below so you can check his channel out, but I do have a couple of questions specific to you, like what made you want to start a YouTube channel and how long have you been doing this?
How long I've been doing it? I started in, well, this channel specifically, so there's a bit more behind it, but what got me into this channel specifically was a mixture of things. One, I'd been looking at kind of doing YouTube as a hobby, but I didn't know quite what I wanted to do, what kind of route I wanted to take it down. I actually have a personal YouTube channel as well that I tried doing some content for, and it was more list based. It was, say, a collection, talking about a collection of first person shooters on the PS1, or talking about a particular series of games like a retrospective, and it just wasn't working out. And then at the start of 2020 the pandemic happened, and I, probably like a lot of people, found myself with a lot more free time on my hands. So I decided it kind of dawned on me that I really needed a hobby. It wasn't so much about YouTube, it was more I was so struggling to sort of find any enjoyment outside of that work, eat, sleep, daily routine, that I needed something for myself to keep me happy. And so I thought, right, let's just do this YouTube thing. And so I sat down with the wife, we tried to plan together what to do, how to do it, and she said, well, you've got so many games. Well, yeah, but you keep going back to all the same ones. She's seen me complete Dark Souls and Doom and Resident Evil 4 like so many times, and we'd only been together like 2 years, 3 years at that point. And so it was more a case of, well, why don't I just play all the other stuff and talk about them? And because there's also the question of, well, we don't have kids, so what happens with all this stuff? If something were to happen to me suddenly one day, what would happen to all these games? And I thought, okay, well, I'll archive them then. And that's kind of where Vakantscull, the idea of calling it Vakantscull Archives came from. Is just, it's literally creating a library of all the games I own and talking about them all. So
that's really, I mean, honestly, like I said, the quality of the videos as well is they're fun to watch, they're enjoyable, they're high quality, and I think a lot of people agree. You've got just south at the moment of 500 subscribers, and you've got several videos that are performed or have gotten over 1,000 views, some of which are even up north of 6,000 views. So if anybody does have the opportunity to at this, I'll put a tile in the top right hand corner where you can check his channel out directly and enjoy some of the quality content that he puts there, because it is absolutely solid stuff.
Thank you.
I hope Mr. AR doesn't mind if we segue a little bit.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Generally, we kick this off with one of the things we do is we kick it off with just kind of discussing our recent plays. This can be on our channel or off of the channel, just kind of what we've been enjoying recently. And I think if no one's opposed to it, I think it would be polite to allow you the first spot in this.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Oh wow. Oh, okay. Well, I spend a lot of time just playing for the channel, basically. So I've been playing nothing new of note, although I am so eagerly awaiting my birthday's in a couple of weeks, and I've already said to the wife, "Get me Elden Ring." So that once that arrives in a couple of weeks, any plans to sort of do anything productive will go straight out the window. But lately, I've been playing a really interesting game for the Mega Drive called Corporation. It's such an odd game to describe. It was released on the Genesis as Cybercop, so I don't know if you've ever heard of it there, Retro?
Yes, I have it.
You have Cybercop?
I have.
Oh, wow. Okay, this might be interesting. So have you played it? Like, to any sort of extended length?
Not extended, but I've played I have played it before. It's definitely an unusual game.
It's such an unusual game. For anyone that doesn't know, and Ash, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Corporation.
I've never heard of it.
It's such a boring name on the Mega Drive. And trying to search Corporation on Google for any kind of background on the game is ridiculously hard. So I kind of wish they called it Cybercop over here as well. But it's basically, it released in 1992 on the Mega Drive and the Genesis, a full year before Doom came out, and it's a first-person shooter. But it's not just a first-person. It's actually a port of an Amiga game that came out in 1990, which was actually 2 years before Wolfenstein released. So it beat Wolfenstein to the computer first-person shooter, and it beat Doom to the console first-person shooter. It beat Wolfenstein to the console as well, because I don't think the first Wolfenstein port came out till like 1994 or something. But it's so much more than that. It's actually closer gameplay-wise to System Shock or Deus Ex, because you have a character that you can create that has stats that you can manipulate for a better play style, to see if you want to be more aggressive or more stealthy. And I picked this up for £1 from my local CEX.
Good old CEX.
It's such a mad game, and if you don't, I bought it sort of with no box, unboxed, no manual. So I had to go online, and I did luckily manage to find a manual, which is just essential, because you have so many items and there's nothing in game to give you a description of them, because so much has to. It's only got so much memory, and it's already trying to do so much with the gameplay that sort of adding descriptions for everything in there and telling you how to use it all would just be unfeasible with they've already tried to cram in there. But I'm really getting into it. It's like it's not a brilliant game like to play, because the frame rate is basically a slideshow and not a rushed one. And the control responsiveness is like both really sluggish and overly sensitive.
Yeah.
But there's something, once you get into it, and you get into for the feel of it, it really does feel like you're playing System Shock or Deus Ex, where you're going around between different floors of a building, and you can either just go in gung-ho, or you can sneak around and shoot all the security cameras so you don't set off any alarms, and get further access into the building to complete your goal. And I'm really looking forward to kind of getting the video out on that one, because it's going to be such an awkward write in terms of trying to describe it. But yeah, basically it's System Shock. Bit like 3 or 4. When did System Shock come out? 94, 95. So it's System Shock a good 2 years before System Shock even happened. So that's what I've been playing recently, and I'm still playing because I'm still not at the end of it. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that at the minute.
Very nice. Yeah, that game is definitely interesting. I know that those are probably more apt, but for the recent ones, it reminds me a lot of Soul Hackers with gun mechanic and the slightly smoother navigation system. But yeah. And what about yourself, AR?
Played pretty much just free games. I'll try and get through them pretty quick. I've been playing 3 games like simultaneously. I've been playing King of Fighters 15. I'm finally back on fighting games.
Nice.
So the game is great, but there's something about the movement that I'm still trying to get comfortable with. I've played KOF games before and I've enjoyed them, but I've never really tried to actually learn one. The feel of it's just so different to any other fighting game. I always feel like I'm just out of reach of what I want to do. Like the movement's really weird to me. It's like very foreign. But I'm enjoying it. It's got a good roster and variety of characters, good stages and stuff. And the online's a huge improvement over the old SNK games. What their old fighting games. I feel like they're finally waking up to doing good online. But played a friend of mine, Michael, on my stream the other day, and he's in Texas. And, like, it was surprising how playable it was due to how far away we were. And, like, they've definitely improved it a lot. But I'm going to be playing more of that. It's fun. I'm worried about my PS5 controller because the last time I was playing a lot of fighting games, I feel like it's ruined my D-pad with my fat thumbs. So I played that much, the D-pad starts to get loose, and I really do think it's because of fighting games. It's fun, I'm liking it. Visually it looks a lot better than the last game, which was 14. Was the big issue with that game, was it just looked like shit. They've done a good job with this one, and I'm looking forward to just playing it like on my stream and stuff a bit more like casually. I don't want to get too try hard in fighting games. That's passed me by, I feel. It's play the arcade mode too, which I always like. But yeah, I'm playing that. I've been playing Horizon Forbidden West, is the sequel, obviously. I'd say I'm about 10 hours in. I've really been taking my time with it. I feel like it improves on the first game in pretty much every way. Just the movement, the combat, it's a lot more fluid. Just feels better to play. Not a graphics guy either, but in terms of like the overall visuals, it might be the best looking game I've ever played. Just stopping in my tracks and looking at everything. Like I never do that in a game. Always like the visuals always like wear off within like 10 minutes for me for a game. This game keeps surprising me. It's fun. It's not perfect. There's some weird collision issues that are sometimes into that can be frustrating, and I feel like a lot of that was in the first game as well. You just get stuck on these ledges or like rocks, especially when you're on the mounts too. I'm shocked they haven't cleared that up because that was a big issue with the first one, at least for me. That's one of my only real issues, and the fact that I feel like Aloy just never shuts up, you know, the main character. Just a little nitpick of mine, like it's not necessarily the game, it's just she's constantly talking and I'm trying to do these things and she doesn't shut up. It's one of those little annoyances I've got. I'm really enjoying the game more than the first one too, and I enjoyed that. Of that setting, like the post-apocalypse, it's almost kind of gone back in time with how they live, but then you've got all the futuristic robots and stuff. You can tell it was the first game was that developer trying to find their footing in like a genre they've never been in. They're known for Killzone, weren't they, before Horizon? They were used to these like linear shooters, and then they went all open, and I feel like they've learned a lot from the first game with the sequel. It definitely shows, but it is getting a bit overshadowed, I feel, now by the other game I'm playing, and that's Elden Ring, which I've just started.
No spoilers, please.
Oh, don't worry, I won't spoil it. Anyway, the final boss. No, I'm really early on in that game, man. Just a few hours, but it's one of those games that when you're not playing it, it's stuck in your head, and you just want to get back to it. Like I've been thinking about it all day because I haven't played anything today. And just one of those games, man. Like sense of exploration, and I feel like you can go in any direction, and just that you'll get rewarded for exploring the world. And they've done a really good job. I'm only early on, so I don't know how much it opens up even more. assuming it'll be a lot. But it's like one of those things where you can run into an enemy and it's too much for you. You can just turn around, go somewhere else, and you'll find another thing to like interest you for the next hour. You can just get constantly lost, I feel, in that game. But like, I'm really early on, but I am liking it a lot, and I am questioning some of the reviews I've seen of saying it's this like masterpiece, because there's definitely issues that I feel like none of them have talked about. At least everyone I've seen talk about the game, no one's mentioned the frame rate or the texture popping. Texture issues I've seen a lot. It's a bit distracting. It doesn't make it, you know, unplayable. I'm shocked like these issues only seem to pop up after launch. All these early reviewers were talking about like never mentioned any of the frame rate issues or anything like that. So it's got a couple problems in terms of the performance, but like the world and the, like every FromSoft game, all these enemy designs, the world designs are incredible. They're some of the best in games, I think. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'll probably play more of it after this podcast. I'll just keep it in my head constantly. I just really want to jump back into it, man. But yeah, that's all I've been playing, just that was free.
Very nice. Yeah. I have not yet gotten to play Elden Ring. I don't yet own a copy, nor have I gotten to play the new Horizon game, Forbidden West. I have turned my sights to, as I usually do, to retro, and for mine specifically, I've gone to this retro-inspired new game, which I wish I could play on the channel, but because of some of the content, I cannot. Infernax.
Yeah, I've been seeing that. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do that, to play that, and it is awesome. It is very, very cool. There is, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it is a rated M. Essentially, it's a Castlevania-esque or a Metroidvania style game in the vein of Castlevania, but rated M for mature. And when I say Castlevania, I don't mean the Lords of Shadow 3D. I mean the two-dimensional, side-scrolling, very similar to Simon's Quest. But there's just firstly, you're able to realize it pretty much at the very beginning. There are multiple endings, so it's not just good ending, bad ending. You can literally just do an event at the very beginning. You can do several events at the very beginning, and that be your ending that you get. The game is super fun, though. It definitely bloody, gory. Definitely attempts to be raunchy in some areas that are, it kind of takes advantage of its being on an older console look, or having an older console aesthetic. It takes that and then adds a healthy dose of rated M content to it, but it's so good, and the soundtrack is fantastic. This is one of those games, much kind of like Shovel Knight, where you would want to purchase the soundtrack and listen to it even if you're not playing the game. So that's actually been really fun. I do recommend it, and it's not a full price game, it's a full featured game, but not full priced. I think it's well worth getting. Having also been new to the PS5, I have also just finished the Miles Morales game, which also had a really great soundtrack to it. I was just noticing that the music in the games that I've been playing have recently been really good. And so I finished that up. That's actually got a really good story to it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it, but I would say that it's definitely worth checking out if you enjoyed the original Spider-Man game. There's a lot of collectibles, a lot of side missions. The story has some great twists and turns. It's fun. There's not a ton of things that I can say about that game because it's so popular. So it's basically just kind of been that and Infernax, and then there was another game, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it because it's kind of a unique amalgam of real words that create this fictitious word, but it's another 8 to 16-bit style horror game for the Switch, and sadly, because I don't have the fictitious word memorized, I can't recommend it at the moment. So hopefully I'll find it at some point and be able to relay it. But it's It's basically I will I'll probably put it up on the screen, the title card here, but it's on the Switch. It's I think it goes for $15, $15 or $20, but it's basically Dark Souls, or a Souls style game, but if it were done in inside of, you could go inside of a lot of the environments as fully realized, not just kind of, because in Dark Souls games you have these kind of cavernous internal fights and struggles and such, but you're not really able to, I mean, a lot of what you're doing, your pickups are for the benefit of the character and less for the, I guess it kind of, there's some of the development of the story, but there's not really a lot of puzzle solving, I guess. And this kind of marries some of the storytelling and the puzzle solving and the Souls-style combat, but then keeps it to this kind of 2D, 8 to 16-bit side-scrolling style game that has this also Metroidvania feel. It's really, really cool. I've only just started in it, and it's actually decently difficult, but it's a lot of fun. So, yet again, I will put up a card or a title or something so that you guys can see what it is that I'm trying to talk about right now. But at some point in time, if you hear me yell a random word out and say, "Oh, that's it," then that's what I'm coming up with. But between juggling all of those, I was also able to, and I haven't gotten to play a lot of it yet. I was also able to pick up incredibly inexpensive copies of Far Cry 6 and Biomutant, and am playing just those are kind of on the side, just little bits and pieces here and there. Both of which I'm finding to be pretty enjoyable. Nothing that I would say would be, 10s out of 10s, but Biomutant's quite a lot of fun. Definitely an interesting one to check out. And I think that I honestly think I couldn't do any justice to it that hadn't already been done. If I can do a quick plug for AR Games, who has some of the gameplay and a video on his channel about Biomutant. I highly recommend checking that out if you'd like a great and informed perspective versus my kind of slapdash job here.
Forgot I did that.
Yeah, it's a great video.
I did that. Oh, nice one. Thank you for reminding me.
Of course.
Yeah, that wasn't for the benefit of the audience. That was just to just for you.
To remind me what I've actually done on my own channel.
It's going to be the video that's on the very end now. The one that's recommended is you did this. It's going to be called "You Did This One."
I've been meaning to play Miles Morales, and I just haven't got around to it because I really like let's say the first game. You know what I mean, like Spider-Man. Really enjoyed that, and I've heard that Miles is just as good, and apparently it's sold like really well. It's one of Sony's highest-selling games right now. I definitely need to check it. It's shorter too, isn't it? Which I always welcome nowadays, shorter games. Even though I'm playing Horizon and Elden Ring at the same time, I do like a shorter game sometimes.
I mean, it's definitely something it's not so bite-sized that it could be passed in. I mean, I guess it could be in a binge single setting, but it would still take several hours. But yeah, it's not as robust as the original one, but it's great. It's really good, and it brings back, if you're a Spider-Man fan from comics, cartoons, movies, or otherwise, it brings in some really cool characters as well. So, but all right, well, I mean, if that's what we've been playing, I'm gonna I'm going to try my hardest to, at some point, without it being too jarring, remember the name of that. But in the meantime, I just mentioned the PlayStation, and we've been talking about the PS5 on this, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. Sony is talking about a new subscription service called Spartacus. I think we've talked about this in the past couple of episodes, and we just kind of keep getting news on it. There is apparently a source, someone from the inside, that claims that they will have 3 different tiers of this, and I think Ash, I think you mentioned that there would be a potential tier system.
It's been rumored for a while, that tier system, and apparently the guy who is claiming this is usually right on a lot of things. It's not just like this random rumor.
Okay.
Who knows? But it's been rumored, like the actual tier thing's been talked about for ages now. But apparently there's been a bit more information that's just come out about it.
So from what I'm seeing here, it shows that the tiers are supposedly called, or will be, essential tier, extra tier, and premium tier. And then the breakdown of that is that the essential tier is just basically the PS Plus $10 as it is. The next tier up is supposedly the base tier, in addition to a downloadable game catalog of 300-ish titles, which is kind of it's just essentially the current PS Now lineup. I think is what the parenthetical here I think is a pretty good indication. It seems like it's looking to compete really with the Xbox Game Pass in this particular one, and rumored to be $13 for that second tier. And then the premium tier will feature all of the benefits from the previous two tiers, as well as cloud streaming, game trials, demos, and classic games, and that'll be $16 a month. I guess I want to dive really quickly into the top end of this, which is the top tier. When you say classic games, or when classic games are said, are we talking about, or are they talking about the potential of unlocking full backwards compatibility? And if so, my personal opinion, why are we paying for that?
I'd probably say it was more to do with reselling the old games digitally, on top of the PS Now lineup. Because a lot of the PS Now lineup, if I remember right, the last time I looked, a lot of it is PS2 and PS3. So I'd like to be wrong. God knows I'd love to be wrong but from the when you say classic, that makes me think PS1.
Yeah, same.
A big part of the PS1 library. But yeah, so like I say, the PS Now lineup is there's not much PS1 in there, if any. I don't remember seeing any.
I don't think there's a single PS1 game in there right now.
No. But the one that worries me is when it says game trials and demos.
To me, the thing that I guess the thing that puts me in this kind of incredulous state is they are releasing this post an already an already very competitive, in fact I would argue winning streaming service and backwards compatibility service, and their prices aren't far off of what their competitors' prices are. But for an Xbox Series X, if I take some of my, and granted it's not 100%, but I've said this before, if I take my original Xbox copy of Star Wars Episode 3 and I pop it into my Xbox Series X, no matter how the mechanisms have to work to make it work, I can play that full original Xbox from 20 years ago game on my brand new Series X console, and that costs me nothing additional. It's just the cost of whatever I originally spent 20 years ago for that game. So I guess my big curiosity here is why if they have the, I understand where they kind of want to do the PlayStation Plus and kind of emulate Xbox's Gold and Game Pass, but backwards compatibility, why do you think that they're, with that backwards compatibility, why do you think that they're adding that into their monetization model versus trying to entice people by adding that, and then, hey, now in addition to that, you have this kind of Game Passy PlayStation equivalent?
Wanna take this, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, outside of the real cynical answer there would be because they can.
Sure.
That's straightforward.
No, but see, I'm not sure if backwards compatibility could be a thing, because that it was one of the things they were adamant about when they first announced the PS5. It was the one answer everyone wanted, and no one liked it when they got it, which was no backwards PS4 backwards compatibility. But yeah, it's the hardware isn't there, and even if they you can install the software, that means that it's going to be emulation based, which is going to bring along all the same problems that it had with the PS3. So games like Ape Escape just flat out aren't going to work, because there's the copy protection in there that's that's in the code for the game itself that's kind of sniffs out the emulation, and it sees it's piracy protection, copyright protection. And so if you put a software-based emulation on there, you put a PlayStation 1 disc in there that's gonna root that out and flag it as an illegal action, you're gonna have that same problem all over again. So that's the only reason what's the main reason I could see them going more in the reselling you old games, because at least if they get the ISOs, or for these old games, they can get them working on the PlayStation 5. Whereas if you just put just slap something like RetroArch on there or something, it's you're going to run into all manner of problems with physical discs. Sure. So it's probably it's going to be a safer bet that what you're actually going to play on there is going to work, and two, it's more money for them. It's the same reason, and I don't know if you've seen the Capcom Fighting Collection announcement. Yeah. And if one of the big things on there was a 20-year-old arcade game that's never been released before for commercial use, and it's Red Earth.
Okay, yeah.
Now, it's like saying, why don't they just make that commercially available on its own? Because then no one will buy this collection, and that's why they'd rather keep the exclusivity. It's like, because if we give you emulation, then you're not going to buy these games again. So it could be a really cynical way of looking at it, but it's also kind of a proven practice in a lot of ways. And it's one of the reasons I think, sort of in terms of the digital market, Xbox are doing far better, and not just doing better in terms of numbers, but doing a better job of kind of understanding its audience and its market.
And I guess that's why I'm as perplexed as I am, because I think that a lot of and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of Sony's moves would have to be elicited by moves that are being made or have been made by Microsoft, and I think we see that a lot of this, not necessarily insofar as the tiers are concerned, but in the way that they are presenting the benefits, I feel like that they're very similar to the benefits that are afforded to you in an Xbox Gold or Xbox Ultimate membership, and I guess that it's not. I mean, I know it's business; it's all business practice. It's not generosity per se. But yet again, I do like the idea. I mean, I'm not going to buy, because of the backwards compatibility, no doubt. I'm not going to buy games that I already have had for a decade, 2 decades. I'm not going to buy those again for the Xbox, but I'm also more enticed to give money for additional projects to Xbox, because they've given me this, so I might as well just pay for this. Like, I understand the give and take. I feel like Sony in this case is a little bit more, and I don't think that this is probably the most accurate word, it's a little harsh, but more hostile to the buyer.
Definitely are. 100%.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's because you give me backwards compatible games, yeah, of course I'm not going to buy those same games again, but I am going to be more inclined if you give me a working backwards compatible system that plays my 5 generations of games since 97 or whatever. I'm more inclined to give you $60 a year, or I'll pay a slightly higher per month price for that. Not for that necessarily, but for all of the other features you're offering.
Yeah, well, it's a complete 180 of what happened with Xbox One and PS4, where Microsoft were the heel in that case, and Sony just came in and didn't necessarily do anything good. They just pointed at everything bad that Microsoft did and went, "We're not doing that." So, and because of that, no one said, "Okay, well, what are you doing that's good then?"
It's true.
And so no one questioned backwards compatibility then, because it's like, oh, we can just put whatever disc in whatever console we want. And we don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of, I can't even remember what didn't Microsoft put out an actual instructional video on how to share your physical disc game with a friend and between consoles?
Yes, and Sony was quick to parody it.
Yeah, they just passed him the game, didn't they, in the trailer?
Yeah,
Sony.
I remember. But but you know, maybe that's where Microsoft learned a harsh lesson, and maybe that's why they're doing as well. Because at the start of the last console generation, Sony were really smug about they were basically riding on the coattails of this reputation of we're not as bad as the worst people, and now the worst people are good people, and Sony can't just ride on the wave of we're better than them, because now you're not, and now you have to actually put some work in, put some effort in, and do something good. And now that it's just been playing catch up ever since then. Or at least, you know, if I'm going to speculate, I won't put anything out there as this is exactly what's happened. Don't question it. It's all true. It's fact, undeniable fact. But that's, I mean, you could see that. That's the way I'd like to see it. Is Microsoft learned a very harsh lesson from trying to be hostile to their market and saying you're going to do this. Yeah. We're going to get away with this because you're going to buy us anyway. You're going to buy our product anyway. And they learned that lesson, and everyone loved PS4. Not because PS4 was necessarily good, even though it was, but because it wasn't as bad as the alternative. And now that isn't there, and Microsoft are doing good things in the market, mostly.
Yeah.
Sony have to actually up their game now, and it feels like they're kind of trying to realizing that now and trying to play catch up with this whole sort of amendment to the subscription services.
They're definitely playing catch up right now. One of the things I keep looking back at with this that I don't like is this game demos.
Yeah.
On like the highest tier, like what's that about? I feel like it's going to be their big exclusives. I'm going to get like a demo each, but I feel like demos should come back anyway, or should just be there in general.
Yep.
I feel like there should be demos for games anyway, like they used to be when you get demo discs. So I think this is, like you said, they're just being smug, and I feel like they know they can get away with it. I feel like it's still going to do well. It's still going to get people that buy it, you know what I mean? But that really bothers me for some reason, that if you pay for the highest one, you can get a demo. It's like, what the fuck's that about? It's like so arrogant to me, like you putting demos behind a paywall. I think that way already about the classic games, but the demo thing just really bothers me for some reason.
I used to get those out of magazines for $2.99, and I got a magazine with it, you know. But
well, that's it. You didn't just get the demo disc. You got reviews and upcoming. You got a lot more than that. I don't know if you remember, but this isn't the first time someone tried to get you to pay for a trial version of a thing. Do you remember the Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 and Crash Bandicoot 4?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Activision Blizzard we're talking about, so you know it's not like they had a reputation to ruin by that point. But it certainly didn't help things to say pre-order the game and then we'll let you download the trial version of it.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Well, and
no.
I think that was the way that races, with, at least for me, the magazine piece. Oh, okay. Well, I'm paying $2 or whatever, $3 for a magazine of reviews as to whether or not I actually want to buy these, and then I get this demo disc, and this demo disc has 4 to 8 demos on it. That's a pretty good deal. But here it's just like, oh, okay, well, this is something I should already have access to.
Yeah. But the difference with the magazines is, and it's probably why Sony are doing it this way, is now when you're getting it from a magazine, you're not giving that money to Sony, are you? You're giving that money to whoever, Future Publishing, or whoever's making that magazine, who probably does have a bit of they probably have to pay something to Sony to be able to publish things with their actual branding and name on there. But that's why should Sony be only getting part of that when they could just force you to pay for digital demos and get all of it.
Well, I think the other thing though too is, like I said, and I use the word hostile, but I think that also creates this kind of reciprocity between the people that are doing it, Sony and the customer, because I'm also less inclined, if you're going to play your business that way, I get that it's business, but I'm also less inclined to want to subscribe to your service. I get all the same thing. There aren't really any exclusives on the other console service. And I'm just playing devil's advocate. I love my PS5, but at the same time, as far as subscription services go, I don't have PS Plus, and I do have Xbox Gold. So I think that's indicative of something that I think we would probably see shy of all the fanboys that are really just going to jump on this bandwagon of tiers. So
Yeah. I mean, some people will inevitably pay for it.
right.
Quite a lot of people will inevitably pay for it because it's just easier than trying to force change.
Sure.
Trying to force positive change in the market. But yeah, I said this to Ash when I jumped on his King of Fighters 5 stream, and he said, "Oh, we should play online." I was like, "I don't have PS Plus."
Yeah.
I already pay for my online connection. I'm not paying someone else an additional amount to go online with one specific little light up box of theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is adding value to the actual subscription. In my case, I have Xbox Live Gold, but I love that because if I don't like the collection that I have, well, I have 300, 400, 500 games I can go through again, and these aren't just old games. These aren't backwards compatible games. These are games that just came out. I mean, we had Halo Infinite day one. If you wanted that, whatever versions of it had, you had that day one. I think that's a big deal. I mean, I think that's a subscription service worth having, is an instant collection as well as new releases on the day that they release. But I don't feel like that this is offering. I don't feel like that this other one, at least the way that it sounds right now, is kind of offering that same enticement.
True. They're definitely playing catch up though, because I don't know if you guys know, they've just announced that Shadow Warrior 3 is going to be day one on PS Now.
Oh, really? I did not hear that. That's okay.
It's literally the first time they've ever done it, so it shows they're trying to do this Game Pass style. I don't think it's going to be day one on Game Pass, so I think that's what's going to start happening. Is it's going to be less about exclusives and more about, in a way, exclusives to their services to add more value. Obviously, Shadow Warrior is going to be available on Xbox. It's going to be day one on PS Now, and vice versa for other games on Game Pass too. And I think that's definitely going to be where a lot of the industry's going, more so than like, we've just bought this developer and all their games are now only on PlayStation. I think that's going to start to die away. They're still going to be available on the opposite platform, but now they'll be first on their service. Do you know what I mean? I think it's going to be more about that. But yeah, Shadow Warrior 3 was just announced that it's going to be day one, which is like, I think that's the first time they've ever done anything like that on PS Now.
Yeah, that's so I guess that leads me down a not necessarily a rabbit hole, though it very well may, of a question on this. Hypothetically speaking, and I would present this question to each of you because I feel like that your answers may be similar but still different. I've kind of been sitting here, and I don't mean to fanboy over the Microsoft, the way that Microsoft has been handling theirs. But I guess my question is, if you had control of Sony and this subscription service was your brainchild, what would each of you, how would you shape it, or what do you think would make it the most consumer-friendly, business pragmatic solution? This kind of balanced solution. What would you do with it, basically?
For me, I think the tier idea is just stupid, and I don't understand the reasoning behind it. It's again just limiting like people, like putting them in these different tiers. I really want to know what the reasoning is behind it, and I hate the higher one, just the stuff that they class as this special thing you're going to get, and it's just what I would expect to be in the service already. I don't think there should be tier lists. I don't know if they can do the A1 stuff for their exclusives. To me, I don't feel like they've got that kind of, they'd want to do that kind of risk. So, the amount of money Microsoft has got, and I feel like they can have a bit more risk with their things, even though Game Pass is clearly working out for them. But I just want, like, all to be in one thing and one service. Like I don't understand the tier thing. And what's in tier 2? I'm trying to read real quick. What do you get? Just PS Now basically, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
His claims. Yeah. I just feel like it should all be one thing. I don't understand the limiting of like putting it in between different tiers for people, and then classic games should be the base one for me, because that's what everyone's been asking for, which they know that, don't they? That's why they're putting it on the highest tier.
Yep.
That's a big thing. Is a lot of Sony fans want some classic games, but yeah, I hate the tier thing. I remember telling you a couple podcasts ago that I really hope they don't do the tier model, and it looks like they are, even though it's not 100% confirmed. But what about you, Sean? What would you change about this?
I'd be completely in line with you. I'd say scrap the top tier, scrap the bottom tier, and make the middle tier the standard. Charge the extra $3, £3, or maybe even if it's going to be the only tier, you know, maybe there might be room to sort of, depending on what you're going to add to the library, maybe even charge a little more, but make it one. Just do away with all the confusion. Make it $13-14 and just have everything on there, everything included in that tier, except for game demos.
That's ridiculous.
Keep those. Do not gate them off, because that is still hostile. That is still a very hostile. Do you want to try something? Fork it over. You know,
you're literally paying to try something before you pay for it. It's insane. You're right about you should just do one sole one, and I feel like, not that they should, but I feel like they could even overcharge that a little bit, and people would be more accepting of it, as opposed to these 3 different tiers. I think they could even put a couple dollars onto it as an overall service if there was just one tier there.
Yeah,
I feel like people wouldn't mind that. Yeah, I feel like people wouldn't mind that as much as all this bullshit they're doing, making it just more awkward than it has to be.
Well, that's the thing. It's not so much the price that they charge; it's their attitude towards it. You could charge more as long as you're open and honest about it, and say, "Look, we want to give you a ton of old games, you know, a ton of PS2 from our PS Now library, a ton of PS3 games that you haven't been able to play for a couple of generations, but we want to charge a little more for it." But and you still get your online and all your connection on top of that, all your cloud saving and this extended library, but we're going to charge you a little more for it. Is going to be a lot better than, right, we can charge you $10 and there's stuff you're not going to get, or you can get a little bit of that stuff and we can charge you $13, but there's still going to be more of that stuff that you're not going to get unless you pay us $16.
And I know I keep referencing them because I think Microsoft is the one to beat here in this. I don't think that's really many people are arguing that. But taking a look at tiers 1 and 2, Microsoft does charge $15, $14.99 here for essentially their one tier, which is Gold plus Ultimate. They used to have it where you could do Gold for $9, or you could add Ultimate if you wanted for $5 additional, and then they just kind of said, well, let's just make it Ultimate. Everyone's paying, you know, $5 more a month and they're getting this. It's just, you know, and it makes perfect sense both from a business perspective and from, yet again, the consumer's perspective, because originally that $10 was, oh, do you want to play online with your friends? I'm not the biggest fan of, I like the idea of people just, whatever they're paying, they're getting something for, and I think that the online playing with your friends kind of thing, honestly, I think that there's probably money to be made outside of that for the server maintenances. But you know, they're looking to charge $1 more and give fewer things, whereas I think Microsoft says, oh well, we'll give you the whole thing for $1 less, and it's just I don't know. I guess I don't see why there wouldn't be more of a carbon copy approach.
Exactly. Well, you may imagine you're trying to do an elevator pitch. You've got a fan in an elevator, and then you've got an executive from Sony on his left and an executive from Microsoft on his right. And he says, right, you've got until this elevator gets off at my floor to sell me. Microsoft can get that out in one sentence.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Sony would need a good 3 or 4 elevator rides just to get through the first 2 tiers.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you. Microsoft's pitch on one shoulder is, hey, would you like everything? It's $15. And PlayStation's like, well, if you'd like to, and they're like, oh, at least we're on the top. We're going to the top floor of the Empire State Building, because otherwise this isn't.
Yeah.
We'll get
Sony's pitch is simply, hey, do you like red tape?
Yeah. I don't think that they. I personally don't think that they have a remarkably strong argument. I mean, the elevator pitch scenario is a good illustration of it, but overall I just don't see them having anything great of value to add.
No.
I guess in this case too, then we've kind of I think that everyone's gonna say, oh, this podcast was just about them beating up Sony and
fuck Sony.
So let's move over to something where we can beat on someone else. This probably sounds bad. Let me no. No, we were talking about the magazines, the reviews, all that kind of good stuff. And reviews, the nature of reviews has actually changed quite a bit since those days. Since I miss good, magazines where you open it up and you see like I said, I think we've talked about this before. You would see the review and you'd see the second opinion and all that. But recently, it's obviously come down to more digital, more online. And you guys actually were mentioning that you're both on the Elden Ring bandwagon. I want to jump on it, but I'm just not there yet. The Elden Ring game is so massive. It's just ridiculously huge. I've seen the post on Twitter of one of the editors and reviewers, and he was talking about how his hand, he was writing until his hand was cramping, and he was playing for countless hours, and he still couldn't meet, from the time that he got it, he still couldn't meet the deadline to get an ample review out after having passed the game. Just there was too much to do. And that brings up the question, do you guys believe that you should finish a game before you review it? Should you have to finish that game before you can give it a full review?
I'll let Sean go first.
See, in terms of there's kind of a yes or no. I'd say you at least need to have spent enough time with it and got a good enough impression of how the game works, its presentation, its mechanics, in order to be able to say, if you like this, if you like A, then B.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird one. Because especially with how big games are getting now, how large games. Was it Dying Light 2 that said you're going to need 500 hours?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like this?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
If you say, right, any review that comes out in the first year of that game's release isn't legitimate because no one could complete it fully in that time, or no one could complete it in that time. It depends. How long were they saying was the just the A to B in the story in that game? Was it still quite? It was still
a good chunk, yeah. I can't
still a good chunk, like still in triple figures. Are we?
I think so.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you say like, oh, you give it, if it's a 100-hour game, if it's a 100-hour story, is any review that comes out within the first week, is that legitimate? Because someone will need to have spent just a whole week just grinding that down. Just grinding away just to get that first 100 hours in, to get past just the story. So I'd say, again, you don't need to play, you wouldn't need to play all of it, but you'd certainly need to play enough to know what you were talking about. I mean, the most infamous case is obviously Dean Takahashi. I think that's kind of the low-hanging fruit of this conversation is how bad do you need to be able? What's the lowest bar for entry to be considered a legitimate review? That's what I mean. Get the right person looking at it is the first step.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get Dean Takahashi playing Cuphead and then struggling to pass the tutorial and then think that anyone's going to trust his word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get someone that can either get to grip with the mechanics or is already in grips with, or is already comfortable with the mechanics, especially for stuff like Elden Ring, where it's not the next in a series, but it's still, even though it's an original game, it's still pretty much Dark Souls. It's still a Souls game. So take two people, one that's comfortable with it, one that isn't. Because the one that's comfortable with the mechanics isn't going to be able to tell you how friendly it would be to newcomers. Whereas
Exactly.
the person that has no experience will be able to comment on that. I'd say if you're being paid to sort of influence buying decisions, then yeah, you at least need to play a good chunk of it. I wouldn't say you need to see it through to the story end, but yeah, to go in with no understanding and completely ignorant and walk out just as ignorant as you came in, because you need to be able to say on the main key points is, does it look nice? Well, not is it beautiful, but how's the presentation? Does it get across what it wants to visually and audibly? What's the sound like? What's the visuals like? What's the mechanics like? Because then you can comment, because you can say, "Oh, I played 100 hours of this game. It was terrible." Well, then what have you gained from that 100? What have you just played 100 hours for nothing, when you could have just thought this game was terrible in say 10 hours, and then moved on to reviewing something else that would be shorter and better. So it depends, because part of it is the getting sort of understanding that you're going to be influencing someone's spending decision, and the other part of it is you have a job to do, you have deadlines. So I think from the deadline perspective, it would be unfair of employers to expect their team to finish every single game before they're allowed to comment on it. And then then this is the kind of the where I speak with a bit more understanding. You've got YouTube reviewers. You've got people that aren't necessarily paid to stick to deadlines, that that make up their own deadlines and that are completely independent. They're doing it for themselves. So for me to be able to, like, from my perspective, if I can't finish a game, I will mention that in the review.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I can talk about it like that, because I can say this game was too damn difficult, or even with cheats, this was damn near impossible. And mention
Terminator vs Robocop review.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the final boss in that game was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Because it was just a bullet sponge, and I was actually gaining, because it was firing out these little turrets that I was destroying and gaining points for. I was actually gaining lives while I was trying to defeat this boss, so we were at a stalemate. I couldn't kill it, it couldn't kill me. So I ended up cheating, and I had to, I felt the need to mention that, because it's like, if you're going to buy this game, be prepared for this. But on the other hand,
you stated it in the review, which is why I don't I have no problem with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, if you're reviewing a game, and your article or video literally says review, I do feel you should at least finish it. But I understand the point, especially when these games are getting bigger. They've got deadlines. I understand how it's just insane, which I do think there should be more reviews in progress videos, or impressions videos, as opposed to full-on reviews if you can't finish them. Change the format for that video. Yeah, I'd similar to what your situation was with the Terminator game, I don't mind someone stating in the review if they can't finish it, or a game-breaking bug, or it's genuinely too difficult. If that's stated in the review, I have no issue with that. If you're claiming you've got this full review for a game and you haven't even finished it, or you've just played a bit, I'm just not interested. That's why I'm more likely to go to single reviewers like Vacant or GameCube Galaxy, these guys, as opposed to like these giant sites, because all these deadlines just, I feel like they mess them up more. It's more, you know, don't really fully finish anything if they've got these deadlines to go to, especially like Dying Light and stuff. It's insane.
Yeah.
Just looked it up. I think it's 80 hours, like just the main game.
So even if you play non-stop for like no sleep or anything, that's what, 24, 48, 72. So yeah, close to 4 days of non-stop play. And so you imagine you take breaks, you take 8 hours. You know, you say you play 8 hours a day. That's 10 days to get that one review out. And then you've not just got to finish playing that for 8 hours. You've then got to write about it. And you've got to gather all those thoughts and all those notes that you've been taking. And then you've got to put it all together in a cohesive kind of narrative. So it's like I say, for professional reviewers with like that work for magazines and stuff like that, I'd say that would be a bit unfair. But for your indie YouTube reviewer who can afford to wait a little bit longer, and it's probably more viable to wait a little longer, because as soon as a new game releases, it's something I've become acutely aware of. As soon as a new game releases, everyone's going to be on it. If you put your review out in the middle of all those, guarantee there's going to be a bigger fish that's going to get all those views that you're not. So, but if you say wait a week and it's all settled, yeah, you're not going to be first past the post, but you're still going to be putting an informed video out there. So it depends how desperate, because I think what you mean, Ash, is when you say people like say a full review, they are literally just trying to get it. Their mentality is literally just first past the post.
It's just to get to the end without any thought and just quick thoughts. Here's what I thought, and then as long as they're out first, they don't care.
Yeah.
Drives me insane, that stuff.
Worst offender for that. I don't know if you know them or if you'll agree with this or if this is a controversial opinion. Dreamcast guy.
I'm vaguely familiar with him.
Dreamcast guy is a YouTube reviewer who gets new content out on new reviews somehow, even if there's an embargo, and a whole day before the game releases. And his excuse will always be, oh, my friend got me a copy from Walmart, they've been sitting in the back, so I got a free copy, and then I played the whole thing because I didn't have anything else going on that day because I'm so lonely. Sorry, I'm just throwing shade, but yeah, Dreamcast guy is, but he absolutely loved Cyberpunk 2077 the day before it released, and I think it was one of the first reviews out there, and he just lavished it with praise. Then the actual reviews came out, and a week later he came out with another video saying everything Cyberpunk 2077 does wrong and why you should wait to buy it. So the practice of I think your problem there, Ash, is that mentality of it's not about the games, it's about the clicks.
I do think there's also a bit of that going on with Elden Ring, like I really do. Like, before that game came out, everyone said it's the best thing they've ever played, this, and I'm really liking the game. I think it's great, but there was no mention of the frame rate, the texture issues. And then the second it was launched, they was just coming out everywhere in articles about here's the best place to play due to frame rate, PC frame rate's terrible, all this, and none of that was talked about right before the launch. So I'm like, who do you believe? Like, who's just these like blind fanboys or just trying to get the review out first? And who are these people who genuinely like, because obviously not everyone's going to have the same experience. Some people are going to play and the frame rate's going to be fine. For me, the frame rate hasn't been the issue, so I am kind of one of those people where I'm like, I haven't heard these frame rate issues, but I've had texture issues and so much popping, just stuff that's really close to you, and it just appears out of nowhere. It's really noticeable, but it's just constant 10 out of 10s. So, like, who do you believe when it comes to these review sites with all these early copies?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I feel like the way that I look at them in terms of reviews is when you don't complete. I feel like I might be a bit of a, and it's not meant to be an overly complicated one, nor is it meant to be a perfect blend, but I do feel like that it accomplishes both of those with some fidelity. The first thing I think that is a game reviewer should never be incentivized monetarily or otherwise by whomever is publishing the game or reserving exclusive rights to it. If I'm going to hear a review from, a reviewer ahead of time, I know that they're supposed to disclose whether or not they've received monetary compensation or otherwise. I don't like that. I like if they get a review copy from whomever, give that to the company, let that be dealt with on the C level, and then give that reviewer the copy. Don't give him how it was acquired. Don't give him any extra bonus. Don't give him, just let them play it through. But I think that, I think that if you can't get past a game, then that's indicative of a bad game, right? I think that can be the review. But if it's a good game, I feel like that not completing the game can do disservice to how good the game is. So, if I play the game for example, if I'm playing Ride to Hell Retribution, that game is awful, but you can tell it's awful from the first 5 or 10 minutes. Being a professional reviewer, you probably want to give it a couple of hours, but once you see that it's just not getting better and you look at the timer and you say, okay, whoever bought this, they are not getting their return on investment in at least the first 4 hours of the game. I can write a review on that and say, look, I'm struggling to get through the 4th hour, not because of difficulty, but because of how just terrible it is, because of how I'm fighting against the camera, and because of how the voice acting is completely taking me out of my original suspension of disbelief. It's bringing me back into how different real life is. I think that can be a review. But then when you have something, let's just hypothesize for the sake of argument that Elden Ring is one of the best video games that's ever come out. Well, some people are everyone's going to want to play that, but are they just going to want to play the first 20 hours and say, okay, this is fun, therefore I've gotten my return on investment? Well, what happens if 40 hours in it hits its climax and then it has a sharp decline? What if the story or the missions become more repetitive, more fetch questy, more escort missiony, more, you've done this whole mission for whatever the storyline is, and at the very end it's a cop-out, QTE style fight, or the story has a sharp decline in the way it's told, and so it's for the first 10 hours it's very intricate and very detailed in establishing lore, and then for the remaining 70 hours it's just ridiculously simplistic. He drew a square and that means something to me for some reason. So to me, I feel like that if it's a bad game, you don't necessarily have to finish it. Once you're a couple of hours in, you can say, no, I don't know anybody that would spend $60 and then tolerate this many hours of this much fighting against the game. But I think that with good games, particularly with good games, I think that an effort should be made to get as much done as possible. And if that means that a review copy should be given out earlier, or that you aren't going to be the first reviewer to get the game out there. I feel like that people, like I said, if we separate the company that's publishing the game from the reviewer, your incentive now is to put out good reviews that get people coming back to you, not reviews which get people to buy copies of the game from Sony, who give you this paycheck dividend. And so I feel like that's kind of where I fall with it. Like I get it, you want to be the earliest reviewer out there, but I feel like that after a while, being the first reviewer out there is kind of cheap and people will see through it. Being the most thorough and the most perhaps the thorough is probably the best word for it. Being the most thorough and perhaps the most accurate to some extent, I think is going to pay actual dividends in your business far more than getting your review out there slightly before some other magazine publication, which probably has an equally unpopular and uninformed opinion. That's just me. I think that's a little more complicated than it needs to be, but that's kind of how I look at it. That's what my preference would be if the ideal were given.
Well, no, there are complicated sort of like hypotheticals in there, like where if you hear the term review embargo, something in your mind that there is a stigma attached to that term. Review embargo. Oh, they don't want reviews going out early. Oh, it's probably because the game's bad and they don't want people to be telling people, but they don't want reviews telling the people the game's bad because no one will buy it day one then. But then you've got the case of Doom 2016.
Yeah, I was going to mention Doom.
There was a review embargo on there, and it was for the exact opposite reason, because they wanted this game to blow people's minds, and because no one got early access to it, it did.
Yeah.
And but I think that's more an exception than sort of the rule. So you couldn't get anyone doing that. You know, you couldn't do that with any game.
But do you think that, I mean, this, because I agree, I think that was a phenomenal example, but do you think that if we were to take, hypothetically again, if we were to if every game that came forth had a review embargo that states you cannot play, see, or review this game until after the official street date, do you feel that reviews would come in at higher fidelity with more, with more, I guess, information, or do you feel that it would still be this same rat race to the beginning? I mean, if Sony, for example, or Microsoft adjusted their time frame for profitability, do you still think that, because you're going to have your early adopters any which way, do you feel like that there would be that much of a loss in terms of quantity in favor of a potential quality ad?
No, it would absolutely be first past the post. If review embargoes hit with every single game, the YouTube would explode every time a new game was released, because it would cripple the bandwidth every time a new game released, because you'd have so many people trying to be the first one out there.
Okay.
It would cripple magazines and sort of online publications as well, sort of like Polygon, and I don't even know since sort of magazines went more digital than physical, I don't even know what's out there anymore. There's like Giant Bomb and Destructoid, Escapist. You know, if you put review embargoes there, it would cripple them because everyone would be going to YouTube to see who got the review out there first.
I see.
Whereas, and this might sound a bit controversial, but if you're doing it, if you considered yourself and give yourself the title of YouTuber, no, you should absolutely not get a early review copy. If you're being paid by a boss, if you are an employee of a publication company or a magazine, yeah, get that review early, because there's going to be a whole host of, non-disclosures and everything that's going to stop you from spoiling it and waving your hands in the air going, I got an early review copy, who wants it, or any of this. They're bound by their confidentiality.
Sure.
We aren't.
Sure, yeah. So flip side of that coin then, for specifically for the reviewers, because it is such a, like you said, a first past the post type of environment, so that they may be able to, and I don't think game companies necessarily will, so this is more a question of should they, not necessarily will they. Do you feel that reviewers should be given their game copies quite a bit earlier, especially when it comes to games that have this kind of scope and scale?
Yes. The simple answer, yes.
just mitigate as best as they can the risk of leaks, but yeah. I think
I'm not really one to talk from the YouTube side of it, because if a game comes out today, I probably won't even think of reviewing it until 20 years from now.
Sure.
So,
sure.
I'll be there nostalgia baiting, sort of when everyone's living on the moon. So,
remember Earth? No.
Good times.
No, I like that idea too. I mean, that's the thing about your channel, and not necessarily to mine. I'm not necessarily a review channel. I'm kind of just a more sit back, chill, have fun. But I find myself going into games that are 20 or 30 or some ridiculous long time ago for a game, you know, and finding enjoyment in that, and going through and reviewing or reviewing those myself and saying, oh well, yeah, and I have time. I've had plenty of time to look at it with objectivity. But I do think that when you narrow that window down to the profit margin window and the launch window and the acceptable window of mitigation for leak and all this kind of different various things, I think the quality of the review inevitably suffers. I think it's just so.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, use my channel as an example in this whole. I have to complete this game because it's old enough that I don't need to worry about spoilers. If you don't know what's going to happen at the end of a 25-year-old game, that's on you. The internet exists. So if you haven't if you have an interest in this game and you already don't know what's going to happen, speak to your internet service provider, because you have no internet, like, at all. But I've had people that sort of come to me and gone, I bought this game because of you. And I feel that pushes me to speak accurately about what, or speak as openly about a game as possible. It's like it you know, because I the last thing I'd want is for someone to watch my video and me say it was bad or just not give enough detail on it, and them turn around and go, I bought this game because of you. Thanks for wasting, you know, however much money I spent on it. It's like the original Sonic. If you're in England, because a big part of the collecting crowd, the ones that actually play the games that they collect and don't just leave them collecting, you know, don't pay 800 quid to have someone grade them or whatever. You know, they're spending a fair bit of money on these games, probably more than the original price they were sold for new. Yeah. I mean, biggest example, Kuon.
Yeah.
That's Kuon is an old PS2 game by From Software, and it goes for at least 450 quid on eBay now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've said, I love this game. I think it's brilliant. Do not go out and buy this game. It is good. It is not 450 quid's worth of good.
Sure. Yeah.
And it sounds, I don't know whether this will be taken well or not, but in terms of games that old, if I feel it's worth it, I will absolutely turn around and say, just emulate it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, well,
You're not gonna. The publisher, the developers aren't going to make their money back on this. Yeah. Because they wouldn't make their money back anyway, because it's a second-hand resale. Which, you know, that's a whole line of questionable legality unto itself. But for some reason, emulation's always seen as the worst one, even though, you know, you technically rob. Well, developers and studios like to tell you that you're robbing them by not buying new. But anyway.
But their entire businesses that are based on selling it and making 100% of the profit. So
yeah, but when it comes to second-hand resale, it's like, if you enjoyed the original Sonic the Hedgehog, something you might not know, in the UK, the PAL version, because it was running at 50 and not 60 hertz, way slower.
Oh yeah,
like it's the music slowed down, the action slowed down.
Yeah.
You play if you're getting into collecting and you've got, say, one of the Sega compilations, the Mega Drive Genesis compilations on PS3 or PS4, and you're like, oh brilliant, I'll go grab the original Sonic 1. That should be my first thing I collect for the original Mega Drive console when I start collecting. And you go, why is this so different?
Yeah.
Because now you're playing a 50 hertz copy of a game, and because no one told you that. So I'd like to think that if anyone watched that video, they'd just start with Sonic 2.
Sure, yeah.
Because that's you know, out of the original, what I like to call trilogy, even though some people might call it 4 games, there's only really 2 and 3 and Knuckles that I'd rate.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can say I actually really enjoyed 1, but I played it on a 60 hertz
exactly
capable,
yeah.
so that's, you know. And that's the thing too. But we knew what was coming. You know, Sonic's phrase over here in the U.S. was "gotta go fast," but over there it was "gotta go moderate speed."
Gotta go at all.
Gotta go maybe.
But yeah, so when it comes to being open about influencing or, you know, potentially influencing someone's spending decision, I would absolutely hate for someone to turn around and say that I lied to them and they spent money because of it.
Sure.
So
When you're going to inevitably have the diminishing returns as well, which I think is, I understand like the sweet spot in this case for the reviews and how the reviews work, and I think obviously moving the review copies back is beneficial. But I also see if you wait a while, it's beneficial, but if you wait too long, because Hagane would be a good example on my side of things. Hagane is a phenomenal game for Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and a Japanese copy will cost you about $300. A copy from over here, a States copy, will cost you about $1,100, maybe $1,500 if you're getting the manual and everything. So, you know, I understand that there's so many different just sweet spots to try and to navigate, and it can be complicated. I guess the frustrating part for me is just I understand you're a business, and I know what you have to do in terms of the quantity thing. I understand quotas and outputs, but at the same time, if you are going to have me reading your publication, you also have to make sure that you've put in enough to make me believe that you've played the game thoroughly and that your opinion isn't just an attempt to meet that quota. I need to feel that you know what you're talking about, because I'm about to spend, 65, 70 of my hard-earned dollars, and that's not an insignificant amount, especially today. And your company bought your copy for you. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just me personally, and I think that there's always going to be controversy. There always pretty well has been, but I think there's always going to be some controversy. I just feel that with us migrating to this kind of purely digital and, like you said, first past the post, I think that this has gotten kind of out of hand, and I think Elden Ring is the not necessarily the tipping point, but I think it's where it kind of has all come to a head to where everyone's kind of recognizing it. To the Cyberpunk portion of things, I mean, I stand by that. My experience with Cyberpunk was great. I was playing it on the Series X. I didn't have all the same stutters and hiccups everyone else had. I actually still quite like the game, but I completely understand where everybody else who played it after that were. If I had been the first guy to review it, I probably would have come out much like Dreamcast guy and said, no, I really love this. If I would have had it after the fact, though, in this case, I wouldn't have had the same point of reference as everyone else. So my review, regardless of when the time frame of it had come out, would have been inaccurate. So I think it's a matter of just having ample time to test all facets of, what portions of it you're going to review, and then publish it based on that, and with hopefully great fidelity to the actual experience for most people.
Yeah.
So, I noticed that I had kind of missed it, but I think it might be opportune to go ahead and say this, because I think it was just the way that I scrolled here. But speaking of games that are coming out and that are, I think we have the appropriate person here for first impressions / likely first review. I think everyone's seen Capcom has announced Street Fighter 6 with a trailer teaser, and
yes.
I agree. The post that was put here says it looks to be in the RE, the Resident Evil engine. It does look really pretty. It's remarkably short, under a minute long, and it shows a new opponent, Luke, facing off against and I hate that they're doing this is for personal reasons, but a slightly aged, not completely, but a slightly aged and bearded Rue. And so it looks really, really cool. I don't like that they've taken that. Like, I didn't like seeing Dulcine with the big white beard in the previous iteration. That's just a personal thing. But
disagree, man. I'm so glad they're finally changing their looks up a little bit.
I don't like.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, you're good. I don't like seeing things age. I think we had a big conversation before that.
Oh yeah.
So that
yeah, I forgot. That's true.
Yeah, that bothers me.
Wasn't going to say anything.
But yeah, the trailer, as far as it looks great. It says the more information is meant to come this coming summer. All the platforms have not yet been announced. I enjoy some fighting games. I'm definitely not an expert. I'm not even good at most of them, though. I'm curious, AR, what you think, who are the fighting game expert. I'm curious as to what you think.
I really like the trailer, man. It was very brief, and I do think it was ridiculous that Capcom had a week-long countdown just to show that.
Yeah.
It was literally for a week, and it wasn't even a real clock. Like, this countdown to that, and it was just a CG trailer. Actually, I've heard it isn't CG. I've heard it's in-engine or whatever. But it's 100% the RE engine. I'm really excited, man. This franchise is like really special to me. It's Street Fighter 2 especially is like my earliest gaming memory and stuff. I just need to see more, like this coming summer thing, and then just gotta wait now. I just want to see the gameplay. So I thought it was interesting now just to dive into it a little bit. Difference in, like, it's clearly this new school versus old school thing they've got going on. The new guy versus Ryu, and even based on the effects they use, like Luke's effects are all these colourful, bright ones, which clearly represent, to me anyway, maybe I'm looking too much into it, but they represent Street Fighter 5, which is what all that was. It was these colourful effects with the V triggers. He was the last character in that game. And you look at Ryu's, and it's this dark, like black ink kind of effect, which is like Street Fighter 4. I feel like I definitely think that was intentional to show this difference. And people think it's going to have these kind of systems where you can choose between Street Fighter 5 style and Street Fighter 4. I think that might be reaching a little bit. I think it's just the trailer to show it's new school versus old school. I'm really excited, man. I love that series, and I just want to see more of it. We really saw in this was Ryu's high definition nipples, and new design.
Among other things.
Oh yeah, the Ryu bulge. Did you see that retro zoomed in?
I did not.
Jesus Christ. His V trigger's going to be his third leg, I think. But yeah, I can't wait, man. I just want more gameplay footage. Well, any gameplay footage. I'll definitely be looking forward to it. You guys
thinking in the Discord?
Do you think? Well, I mean, I like I said, I'm not a fighter game. Not that I'm not a fighting game fanatic. I love fighting games. I'm not good at fighting games, and I think that's fairly evident on my. Which, granted, I don't think you consider it a fighting game in the same way that Street Fighter was or is, but the Power Rangers playthrough that I struggled for an hour and a half. But I'm excited about.
Sorry, I'm looking at the Discord.
Let's see this here. Hold on.
I had to show you the Rio.
Try, you'll have to put that on the screen.
Do not.
Oh my! Wait, whoa! I don't think we can safely put that on there.
I don't think we can.
It's because
if they manage to get it in the game somehow, then more power to them.
Because that's not going to be there in gameplay, is he? Looking, playing the game, flopping around. You know what I mean?
New physics. Well,
that's a detailed RE engine.
That's the thing we're looking at. I mean, I can only describe it. We're looking at it, but it's not just we've seen Soul Calibur, right? When you lose armor and you've got the wrap, and there's this kind of bulge. It looks like everyone's always just wearing a cup, and then that's but no, this one's got some shape to it. So
it's resting on his foot on his right leg.
it's like you can actually see the difference between 1, 2, and 3. So. Yeah,
the internet kind of went crazy over that.
I mean, I guess it's only fair considering the chest physics that have been in video games for as long as they have. I mean, Dead or Alive is a series of video games based off a fighting franchise exclusively dedicated to making sure that individual breast physics are held. So,
yeah,
like I get it. It's cool, but at the same time, like I don't want to get this video banned. So we'll let Capcom do that.
No, we'll Google it.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to say,
I'm not going to tank this podcast for
them. Yeah, take a look at it though. Google. What was your? I have to ask. What was your? You've probably deleted your history now. What was your search? What did you search? To get that result.
Doesn't want to say.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I just searched Ryu SF6 crotch. I'm very direct in my my Google searches.
Someone's gonna come in and look at your. Let's see. We've got how to make tahini. We've got new video games 2022. We've got Ryu SF6 crotch, and we've got Rachel Ray. One of these is an outlier.
It's the tahini.
It's the tahini.
It's the only one food based.
It's the only Rachel Ray. But yeah. So but beyond that, what were your impressions of the teaser?
Mine?
Yes.
I do not put stock in cinematic trailers and teasers until I say gameplay. I don't really care. It's nice that they've announced it. I'm glad they've announced it because I'm a bit like Ash. I'm a big Street Fighter fan. Huge. Like I get into like some, not a lot of, but some of the lore. So I'd be interested to see when this one's set, because I know that Street Fighter 5 is actually set before Street Fighter 3.
They've
in terms of the timeline, Street Fighter 3. In terms of the timeline, sorry, Ash.
You're right.
In terms of the timeline, I think Street Fighter 3 is at the end of the timeline, and so like Gil and Urien are already established, and Street Fighter 4 is their introduction to the Street Fighter lore, to the Street Fighter timeline. So I'll be interested to see if it's set between 5 and 3, or if it's set after 3.
They apparently they've confirmed it wasn't to do with this announcement. It's been during Street Fighter 5. They confirmed that the next game will take place either at Street Fighter 3 or afterwards.
Oh,
so
cool.
It'll be around there, yeah. So this might be the first game that is actually after Street Fighter 3, which I think is why Ryu looks different. I think they're finally aging them up a bit. Like, I actually like that. Like, I love all the classic costumes, and I understand Retro's point, but like, I've seen these characters now look the same in like more than 5 games.
Yeah, I was actually glad to see bearded Ryu in 5.
Yeah, like this. Yeah, this is the thing. The costume, how he looks in 6's trailer, was a costume in 5, and everyone was like, this should have been his default outfit. Yeah, you know, they can always do the classic costumes as unlockables or even DLC, and they'll sell like crazy.
Well, why do several of them look older? I guess this is a question, because I didn't realize the lore went so deep. But why do they look a bit older in 5 to me than they do in 3? Because 3's first strike,
very
right?
Good at managing their timeline. That's what.
That's all it is. It's just they don't care about the story as much as some fans do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally, which I think they finally seem to. They might be putting some effort in by the look of this. Even with Luke, like if you look at his Street Fighter 5 design, he's really aged too. He looks much better. He's got a bunch of scars. He looks way older, not way older, but he's clearly aged since that. But apparently that was a somewhat of an emergency season because of all the COVID stuff. They never planned for a season 5. Luke was apparently supposed to debut with Street Fighter 6. They put him in 5, which is why I think he looks so weird if you look back at Street Fighter 5's design. It just looks like this jumbled, like he's just got stars everywhere. So what even is this character? I feel like they listened to, like, a lot of people didn't like the way he looks, even though I heard he's quite fun. I haven't played him, but I feel like they've just finally moving forward, like it's finally getting past Street Fighter 3 in terms of the timeline. I do think any confusion is just because Capcom don't really care that much, or haven't in the past.
Well, I guess another question on this, because this is something I love Capcom. As far as recently goes, I've really enjoyed their work. I've really enjoyed the Resident Evil remasters. I really liked 8. But Capcom is kind of I wouldn't say necessarily the original, but they are one of the original practitioners of 5 iterations of the same game. And King of Fighters, I know, takes that to an entirely different level. It was a King of Fighters or Dead or Alive? Dead or Alive it may be. One of those two franchises take that to an entirely new level with $1,000 plus DLCs that you can purchase.
Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, usually this is the one thing that I don't care much for, is if I buy a big story game, or if I buy a fighting game or something like that, if I'm going to spend the same amount of money I was going to spend on any other game, then I'd want the DLC to be the same. And Capcom kind of just keeps putting DLC in. Mortal Kombat does the same thing, but it's just, do we expect to see a whole bunch of these microtransactions, or do we expect to see it managed the way the DOA was, with several season passes that are, $70 a piece? Or are we gonna see hopefully a reasonable, let's put this season out for $15 here and there, and then the whole thing, once you're all in, maybe $120.
I do feel like fighting games are kind of becoming live service games, or at least Street Fighter V was.
Yeah.
I hope it launches better than Street Fighter V, because we've talked about this before. That launch of that game was terrible. You couldn't even verse the CPU like one-on-one. It didn't exist. No arcade mode. It was a really bad launch, but Capcom are in a much better position now.
Yeah.
Apparently that's why Street Fighter V was a PlayStation exclusive, because Sony helped them with like the funding and stuff, because they were in a rough spot with that game. They're in a completely different place now, and I'll be shocked if they make the same mistake again. I do think it's going to launch much better, and with the basics of, in my opinion, a fighting game should always have an arcade mode. It's got character endings. That's my favourite thing about fighting games. Even though I love playing online and stuff, I always love these arcade modes with like secret fights, or just separate character intros and endings and all this stuff. I do think they're going to launch better and better overall, but I still think there's going to be constant skins, constant stages to buy and all this. Like, I feel like they made so much money on Street Fighter V's cosmetics, especially Chun-Li. I feel like Chun-Li had like 200 costumes.
Yeah.
Apparently they sold I don't think they're going to stop doing that. I don't think the overall package is going to be better. I'm really praying for it, because I can't have another Street Fighter 5 not at launch anyway. That game they definitely improved that game, but it took years.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they start off better this time.
Well, and I guess that's another, because I can see the same, because you said that they had those costumes for Chun-Li. I think Chun-Li's kind of always been and I don't mean this in a derogatory fashion. I just mean that I think that this was probably the practice, is that she's meant to be an eye catch of some kind.
Same with Cammy. They do it with Cammy too.
Right, and so, but with this picture that Vakantscull has sent on there, I'm wondering if we can expect to see even more of that now with the male characters, more people that are dressing with physics like, was it Uriel?
Urian, yeah.
He was
Urian, is it?
Yeah.
Urian, yeah.
Who is? Oh, okay, never mind. I was wrong. I know what I was thinking of, and it was wrong. But yes, yeah, like him with where he just kind of has the wrap down there. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's literally all he wears.
Right. Yeah. So I'm wondering if with the new physics, if that's kind of, if they're trying to balance that out in equality, but then also, okay, hey, well, now we have slightly more skimpy male costuming done as well. I'm not a fan of microtrans. I don't mind DLC, but there's a difference between DLC and microtransactions. There's a difference between paying $30 for, was it $30 for like 30 hours of additional content with The Witcher, and $5 per character for an additional 80 characters.
Well, that's the thing. Like Street Fighter V has some bullshit. You can change your name, your online name, but it's £8. You have to pay to do that. You can't do it free.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Why?
So you've got your online name, haven't you? That's, you just, when you first boot up Street Fighter V, you have to put in your online name that you want. And if you want that changed, you have to pay. I had a look at it the other day, and I clicked on it, and then it took me to the store, and it was like $7.99 to change your name once, obviously. And then if you want to do it again, it would be another $7.99. So they've got some really sleazy things in there, and you can earn fight money, but it is ridiculous how long it takes.
Jeez.
Like when there's no new characters coming out to do no new trials, you can't earn anything pretty much.
could
Then it
change.
forces you to lean towards, oh, I'll just pay with real money then. Because you can, technically, every character that comes out for that game, you can unlock them with fight money.
Yep.
There's no way you can earn that much to get every character. It's impossible. I don't believe you can do it.
That's it.
So they've got a lot of bullshit in there that I hope it's gone in 6, but I don't know, I'm not expecting it to be.
Very Battlefront 2 like in the unlock. Way
Sorry,
you
I was
unlock.
taking a drink.
Yeah, no, sorry, no. But yeah, very Battlefront 2 like in the character unlock, or at least the original Battlefront 2. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of like that actually.
for not much more, I could change my actual name legally. That is pay
It's ridiculous.
$7.99 to change a virtual name. All right, I'm good. Brand recognition. So
Yeah. Would you put as many numbers at the end of your name if you did it in real life?
yeah, that's. I'd like to change my name to the Retro Room 485 336, and I'm also gonna have to spend the extra $7 to do it in Street Fighter too. So, but I don't know. That's frustrating. I hate the microtransactions. I think that should be a topic all its own rather, is microtransactions. But to like I said, I think the general consensus on it is everybody's kind of excited. I'm excited about it. I am a little concerned, and of course I'm not as well versed in those. But it's good to see. It's good to see Street Fighter, especially a game franchise that's been around as long as Street Fighter. It's good to see that have been, or still continue to have iterations coming out, new versions, new lore, new story. I guess our final topic / question here is, of those franchises that we've seen, 20, 30 years ago that have kind of died out or that have had a stopping point. For you guys, which ones would you like to see come back, either as a remaster or a sequel that you maybe haven't seen in some time?
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah, okay. I got a couple in mind. One, Legacy of Kain.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic series, story. I know they tried the reboot back in like 2013 or something like that.
I don't even remember that.
Dead Sons or something like that. Yeah, and then they tried an MMO in 2016 called Nosgoth, which was cancelled before which was like the servers were shut down before it was even released, like publicly. I'd just love to see a return to like a continuation of the story, because the way the story ended, there's still a lot of characters in play on both the sort of the protagonists and antagonists. We didn't see a conclusion to Kain, Raziel, or the Elder Gods story. It just kind of went, right, here's a natural stopping point, but it's not over yet. And so I'd love to see a continuation of that, because it's such an original world. Like the original Blood Omen I recently played through, and it's very kind of standard wizards, mages, medieval kind of. It's sticking to a lot of established tropes, whereas starting with Soul Reaver, none of the architecture looked like it was referencing anything that had come before. And it was this entire world where a millennia had passed, and all these different sort of I don't know how you'd say it, but like the architecture of the world wasn't pulling from any established kind of imagery that already exists in other franchises or other genres. And I really, really like that. And it kind of handles time travel, so. But yeah, the whole story of it and the gameplay was just there. It was what it needed to be. The other one is Bloody Raw.
That's a good one.
They don't need to, because
They need to.
They should. They really should.
I just revisited that just to about a couple of years ago when I picked it up for the collection, just to make sure the discs were working, and I picked up like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're still so much fun, and they are unique as well. You know, they're what would you call it? Where like Soul Calibur, where you have, and it's not 2D, it's full 3D, but you have like a stage and you can have ring outs and everything. It's one of those fighters, but instead of having like one character where you'll do quarter circles and half circles, and another character where you'll do charge, where you'll hold and do charge moves, it's every character essentially has the same set of moves, but the way you interact with them and say the speed and the range of each of those moves. So it's essentially, once you learn how to do one character's moves, you know how to do all their moves. But because of the way that character reacts differently to your inputs, you have to kind of... It's a nice way of making it so you can play as everyone. Whereas if you go to something like Street Fighter 6, I am terrible with charge characters. Cannot play Ken, cannot play... So not Ken, Guile. Cannot play Guile, cannot play Honda. Anyone like that, just terrible with. But if there was a way for me to choose to do quarter circles and stuff for their moves, so their moves would play it exactly the same way, but it's just now I could manage them, then I'd be more inclined to play those characters. So having similar playstyle for every character and just having the way their moves and everything react to those inputs differ is just something you don't really see anymore.
Yep.
Or you don't really see at all, because it's all, everyone has unique inputs.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what if they didn't? Could you still make them all feel unique? And plus, it'd be a nice return to a franchise that, you know, could have made a real dent in the competition had they stuck around.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So those are mine. Oh, and a good Ridge Racer game again, because Ridge Racer Unbounded was just a hot mess. And I called the series done after that. After Ridge Racer 7, I was just like, okay, that's as high a note as you can hope to end on. So if they could make another good Ridge Racer game, I'd happily take it. But in the meantime, I've got like Burnout and Dangerous Driving to revisit. But
Nice. I think those are great choices. What about yourself, Mr. AR?
My first pick was the new Time Splitters, and then I remembered that they're actually working on that, and then I got very happy again. So in a lot of them, a lot of the original team too, or at least the guys who led it, so I'm excited about that. My second choice would be Shaolin Monks 2, which is a Mortal Kombat spin-off. Shaolin Monks is. You know, it's an action game set in the Mortal Kombat universe. Plays Liu Kang and Kung Lao. If you remember correctly, it takes place during Mortal Kombat 1 and then throughout to Mortal Kombat 2. It's just basically a 3D beat 'em up, and I was obsessed with it back in the day. Anyone who know, you know how much I love MK. But I do genuinely think it was a well-made game, and it's always brought up too with like just fans of MK whenever like people like, what do you want to see next? A lot of people mention like something different. You know, they, as much as I love all those games and I love Injustice, they're just constantly making like fighters now, just pure fighting games. And I'd love to see them go back and try an action game with all the experience they've got now. And I feel like it might be different, but I'd be interested in seeing that, because the game came out in 2005, like the original.
Yeah.
I don't even think it would necessarily play the same. If anything, I feel like it'd be more of just a third-person action game, like not necessarily God of War, but you know what I mean, like that layout. I feel like that could be really interesting. Like, I want to see NRS expand too, and not just make these fighting games. I feel like that would be a good launching point for them to explore the world that they already know. Just do a sequel of one. I do think a lot of people just want a remaster of the first game, which I'd be fine with, but I'd love to see a sequel. I'd just love to see the approach they would make now, after it being so long. But Ed Boon did confirm before that a sequel was in the works, and it was called Fire and Ice, which obviously, you know, is going to be Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but it never got made. So I'd be interested to see if that's what they would do with it nowadays. They just play as those two guys, and it'd be almost not necessarily a sequel, but its own thing. But it's kind of a spiritual sequel, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
I just want to see more stuff from that work. You know, I love MK. I want to see more stuff surrounding that world that's not just the fighting games, and I feel like they could do a good job, and they could make this like AAA action game based on with co-op. It was the co-op was huge in that, like you could these juggle combos, and then the other player could launch them and all this stuff. And that's my pick. Besides Time Splitters, I'd love to see that back. Have either of you guys played the first one, Shaolin Monks?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You're fans of it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was certainly better than Special Forces on the
Oh yeah, Jesus, I don't want that back. It's
just
the
to,
worst
just to play,
MK.
just to put the cat among the pigeons. I'll ask you this: say they actually make that game, and then they go ahead and make Cole Young the main character.
No, don't get me started on that film, man. Fucking hell. Need to stop quick before I go on a fucking hour rant. He's already going to be Mortal Kombat 12. Jesus.
Is he actually confirmed for the next?
Oh no, they haven't even confirmed the game, are they?
Right.
I think there's a chance.
They're gonna put him in Injustice 4 or Injustice 3 instead.
They'll put Cole in the next MK besides, except for Johnny Cage, like they'll replace him. They did in the film. Yeah, I think it'd be great to see the sequel, man. A lot of people want it too. Like, I feel like it'd be something different for that team instead of fighting game for once. No, it's the same kind of thing in a way.
They put a kart racer in
In Deception, or was it Armageddon?
Armageddon or Deception.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they did kart racing, they did chess, they did.
I want a Mortal Kombat kart racer.
They did Puyo Pop, Puyo.
She enjoyed those mods.
I know I'd like to call them a guilty pleasure, but in Armageddon it was probably better than the main game.
Oh, it was.
I think Armageddon was it probably still is one of my favorites to go back to.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah. Of course, I have it on the Wii. So.
Do you have the version that has Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 as a unlockable? Because I know there was a special edition where you could unlock Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. It was US exclusive.
I'd have to take a look. I mean, if it's something that I know I didn't know it. If I do have it, it's something I've not yet unlocked or messed with enough. It's the Wii, the one that came out on the Wii.
Yeah.
So that probably is, because I think they said that. I think that one's special. I'd have to go grab it. It's across the room from me, but I believe that one does say special edition. I just figured it was a special edition because it wasn't on the previous generation console.
No. It's there's a special edition where I think you get an extra character as well, Chameleon.
Yeah,
it is an exclusive to that version.
I do have a quick question about Mortal Kombat 12, and when it happens. Do we think that Goro's bulge will be as detailed as Ryu's?
No. It was destroyed in the movie by Johnny Cage. It can't be.
Well, and he's got one of those kind of loincloths that sort of has the little floaty bit at the front anyway, so even if it did, you wouldn't really see it.
It's harder to see when you have an innie instead of an outie. So...
Took it off topic, sorry. Metro, what's your choice?
That's all good. I was trying to see what the I was trying to see if I figure out if I had the special version or not here, but I have no idea. I'll have to go back and look. I want to see if I do though. I have it on Wii. I have a PS2 disc of it, but I don't think there's anything special about it. But I play the Wii version because it just runs really well. For me, honestly, I don't think mine are going to be any kind of shocker. I had three originally, one of which was Chrono Trigger, the Chrono Trigger franchise, but of course Nintendo did announce that they are working on the next install of that, and that they did that at the same time that they were announcing the kind of collector bundle that they're putting out with Chrono Cross and Radical Dreamers.
Oh yeah.
And I already have a cartridge of Chrono Trigger and a cartridge of Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross, so I just want to know what comes next. Would be very happy to have. But since they're already working on it, I think that this one is. I think I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to hear me say that I wish that they would bring Castlevania back. I don't. The last versions of the Castlevania games that we got were the Lords of Shadow games, which the latest one had come out in 2014, and they were supposed to have been a reboot. Now I think I'm not going to say I know that most people didn't really care for the second game not the second game, but the full sequel. The middle one is considered a 1.5, which is
a Mirror of Fate.
Yeah, and I think I honestly thought 1 and Mirror of Fate were. I'll throw this out there. I liked all of them. I thought the first one was great, marrying elements from God of War and Shadow of the Colossus. I don't think it ever claimed to be original. I think it just took things that people liked and that worked well and put them together and said, okay, but let's make the Castlevania world and lore where this is, and I think that was fine. Mirror of Fate I actually quite like. It kind of it's kind of a 2.5D in the way that Batman Arkham City Blackgate, I think, or Arkham, I can't remember what it is, but it's fine. It plays very similar to that. Not quite as free as that. It's even more similar to how the old retro ones would play with 3D graphics, and then the occasional kind of mode 70 movement where you can realize that you're in a three-dimensional space, and I want to say that's like 1 or 2 moments. And then of course you have 2, and 2 is I thought 2 was pretty good. A lot of people gave it like 4s. For me, it was a better than average, not phenomenal game. I would say 7 out of 10. On the high end, maybe 6 out of 10 if I'm being completely honest, but still that's above average. And I had a lot of fun with it. If they brought back another Lords of Shadow game, which I don't know where they would go, I don't want to spoil anything, but I don't know where they would go with that world, since 2 kind of ties most of it up in a bow. If they had somewhere to go with Lords of Shadow, fine. I personally, though, would just like to see them go all the way back to the last old canon game that they came out with, which I don't know if it's even considered still canon or not. I'm pretty sure it is, which is and I can't think of it right now, the fighter game for Wii.
Oh, Judgment.
Thank you. That was the last one where they kind of tried to do it was kind of weird with the canon, because they had Aeon, and Aeon's explanation was that he was all places at all times, and he kind of tried to merge and make these plot holes that didn't work in the original and fit. I wouldn't mind them going from there on and just saying, okay, well, here's your next, you're going from that area on and then exploring more of the Belmonts. I mean, we had our Game Boy Advance and all that kind of good stuff, but I think for going from there and saying, okay, well, here are all of the Belmonts you didn't get to play. We didn't really get to play as several of them. I think that would be cool. I also think it would be really cool for an old canon Dracula protagonist game from Castlevania. We kind of get to see that in Lords of Shadow. I think it'd be really cool to see that with the old canon, the Matthias Kronkvist canon. I think that'd be really cool. So that would be a huge one for me to see that come back.
That'd be cool.
But other than that, I think that for the time being and for foreseeable future as well, I think that most of Castlevania is probably relegated to pachinko machine.
Well, it's lost to the great Konami void.
They also own Bloody Raw.
They do now, yeah, because they bought out Hudson Soft.
Never coming back.
Well, that's the thing too. Konami was so I love the back, and there's a lot of the Konami franchises. They had TMNT back when they were Ultra Games, right? They were created
the arcade machines.
Yeah, well, and they create that they had all these just ways about the whole thing is they had these great IPs, and they were like, oh, okay, because I think Nintendo was saying you could come out with 3 games a year, and they made Ultra Games so they could come out with 6. Each company come out with 3, and they were right. All of their IPs were great. They had that. They had TMNT. They had Castlevania. They had Contra. Just so on and so forth.
Yeah. Rocket Knight Adventures as well.
Rocket Knight.
That one just seems to fall by the wayside when you're talking about Konami's catalog.
Yeah.
It's the first game at least is almost a perfect game in my eyes.
Which Sparkster?
The original, just Rocket Knight Adventures. I think Sparkster was the one that came afterwards. Knights.
Oh, you're probably right. I have the reason being is I get mixed up on those. Is I have Rocket Knight Adventures on Genesis and I have Sparkster on SNES.
Yeah, and Sparkster was its own game, whereas there was a Sparkster on Genesis as well, which was a sequel. So it gets very confusing.
Okay, I didn't realize.
I mean, if we'll talk about Konami IPs as well, there's a really weird one on PlayStation 2 called Shadow of Memories or Shadow of Destiny, and that was actually a Konami game as well, and that was more akin to, say, a Japanese take on the Broken Sword kind of point and click adventure, and that was just so weird, and I'd like to see that get a bit more love. So maybe either reboot it or just re-release it. But yeah, most of Konami's back catalogue I'd happily take. I love what they did with on the I don't know, you call it current generation or last generation with PS4 and Xbox One. It's still pretty current with the classics collections. So the Contra Anniversary Collection, the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, the Arcade Collection. And I think that was a really good thing on Konami's part.
Mm-hmm.
So it proves that there's still someone, with a brain cell that's got its seatbelt on over there.
I hope, if they don't want to make a new game too, I still hope that they will port over, and I know that it's kind of difficult, but I hope that they'll port over the DS trilogy at the very least, as their at least one final hurrah.
Yes, I'm waiting for that. Since they released the Advanced Collection, that's what I'm waiting on now. Is like Dawn of Sorrow, Order of Ecclesia, and was it Portrait of Ruin?
Portrait of Ruin, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just edge of my seat waiting for those to come out, because I just lose hours and days whenever they seem to release a new collection. Happened with Contra, happened with Classicvania, happened with Requiem, where they did Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night together, and then the Advanced Collection, and it's not good for me, but knowing that isn't going to stop me.
I stand by that. Order of Ecclesia, in my opinion, is one of the most solid. Don't get me wrong, Dawn of Sorrow and Portrait of Ruin are great too, but in my opinion, Order of Ecclesia is just one of the top tier Metroidvania / Castlevania games. It's just of the three, even, and I know that that's unpopular. I think most people kind of gravitated towards Dawn of Sorrow, but I thought Order of Ecclesia was just the top tier of those DS1 titles. And so I'm fortunate in my case at the moment. I still have mine, I still have my collection in box with manual, but I certainly wouldn't mind consolidating to my Switch, or which is what I have most of them on. The question is, they've kind of thrown in with each one, they've kind of thrown in special games, iWinks, etc. So for the first one they did Kid Dracula, and then the second one they did Dracula X. What do you think that with the DS iteration, or a DS compendium, what do you think that they would add as the kind of special game there?
Trying to think what's missing, really. They could do a HD re-release of Harmony of Despair and give that online element.
That would be okay. Yeah, that'd be cool. Part of me also wonders if they would, and I don't know if it would be worthwhile considering it's just the classic, but if they might be able to consolidate and place Chronicles on there.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. I'd love to see that. That was well, it wasn't just PlayStation 1. I think it got a PC Engine release as well, didn't it? And then it was ported to PlayStation with the remix mode on there.
That's just me. I think a lot of people agree. I don't think I had heard I can't remember who it was. It may have been Game Grumps at some point, where they were talking about, and it's one of their older ones, but I think it was them that were saying, Castlevania's kind of always been in the second tier of games. And I guess the more time that's passed, the more that I talk with people, the more I'm realizing that Castlevania has not, at least the way that I see it, is not in second tier. I think it's kind of, it's not Nintendo not necessarily proprietary, but it's not Nintendo owned. It's not first party. But I still think that a lot of people look at it as fondly as they do, Mario and Zelda, and so I don't know if I'd put it in that second tier. But at any rate, I think that would be my kind of top vote for bringing a franchise back, and I don't care which iteration you brought. It's just one of them. But I think, as it stands, that most of the topics that we had intended for today have been exhausted. We're sitting here about the 2-hour 5 mark. So I guess I want to throw out and see if there's what else that we may want to discuss, plug, promote, or otherwise say.
There's nothing that comes to mind for me, but if you've got another topic, either of you, yeah.
No, I'm all good here. I'm
Good.
happy with everything that we've that you discussed, and that I was able to kind of, usually I'll turn round after a conversation and go, I really shouldn't have said any of that, should I? I'm quite pleased that I didn't
It's usually me on this
let
show.
myself down, so I'm happy with that.
No, I think it was. I mean, I think I can speak for both of us, but I won't necessarily, since he's here as well, in saying that it's been an absolute pleasure getting to talk with you and hear your takes on these. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
So,
And if you ever figure out what that Metroidvania game was on Switch,
Oh yeah, I've been thinking about that.
with bated breath.
I will if once this podcast is finished, I will run into the other room, grab my Switch, and I will get it to you. So I'm gonna put a thing up there so the audience can see it, but I couldn't. It starts with an S, and that's about as far as I've gotten. But any which way, I had a lot of fun. For anybody who watches,
I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you for being here.
Go on, Richard.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Viking if you wanted to plug his channel and let us know where everyone can find him and stuff.
Yep. I'm on Twitter at Vakantscull, Vacant with a K, Skull with a C. Vakantscull Archives on YouTube. I do have a Facebook, but it doesn't really get a lot of traffic, so I'm not too fussed about that. So yeah, if you want retro reviews of anything to PS3 at the moment is the latest I'm going, so I don't spoil new games or more recent games for other people. But if you want to see full playthroughs of games while I talk about them, review them, give my opinion on them, tell you whether they're worth your money or if you should just go out and find it on the open seas, absolutely come down and check me out. Thank you.
Yes, man, good stuff. In my R games, I haven't been really doing anything as of late, but I'm about to start making more videos and working on some reviews and stuff. But yeah, should be in the next few weeks. But you, Retro?
As far as I go, I mean, I'm the Retro Room, can be found on YouTube at the Retro Room, or you can find me on Facebook and Twitter at the Retro Room. With Twitter, it's one word, the Retro Room, with 3 R's. On Facebook, of course, it's just the Retro Room, as you would traditionally spell in space. And our channel focuses on typically retro, though we do kind of dabble in new games, but like I said, just coming together in community more so than anything, and focusing on getting to play fun games and hopefully introduce you to games that you may be excited to play in the future that you haven't yet had the opportunity to, and we kind of value and enjoy conversations. Generally, I'll stream on Sundays, and so if you do happen to get a chance, definitely come by and give us a check out. Otherwise, I think we have exhausted our series of topics for today, though I had a lot of fun with Mr. Vakantscull and Mr. AR, and we will be coming back with a new podcast on Press Restart.